Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of CS Cyber. I'm Chad.
And I'm Sean.
And today we're continuing our NIST 800-171 series, and we're talking all about media protection.
All right, let's do it.
All right. So media protection, it ensures that the sensitive information stored on physical and digital media is safeguarded from unauthorized access, loss, or theft. So this really applies like the whole thing to organizations that are in control of controlled unclassified CUI information, right? So
does that include zip drives?
Yeah, man. If you can find a zip drive, I wouldn't put. There's probably 5.5-inch floppies out there.
Hey, they're out there.
So
they're out there.
Yeah, but I think that's really good, right? Because I mean, when people think about media protection, a lot of people think of physical portable media, right? But
yeah.
In conjunction to that, which it is important. And first of all, I can't believe that we're still using thumb drives to move things around, but
I know
it happens every day. But it also applies to your spinning disk, your solid state disks, the encryption there and things like that. So, just some key requirements for this control set. Access control for media. You need to restrict access to authorized personnel only. Encryption for data at rest and in transit. I think people kind of struggle with this sometimes. We come across a lot of organizations that aren't really using encryption at rest, or they may be using AWS thinking that it's already encrypted, but they need to do that. Go ahead.
No, well, even the access control for media, I mean, restricting access to authorized personnel only, there's a physical portion of this, right? That's largely in the USB drives and the solid state disks and stuff like that. So just the keeping track of things physically could be a challenge.
Yeah, and a lot of people don't do that at all, right? But if you're really serious about this, then each one of those devices will be labeled, they'll be encrypted. There'll be a process associated with all of that. They'll be locked up. But I see USB drives.
Nobody does that
everywhere on people's desks when I go out into the field, right?
I appreciate your desire, but no one does that.
No. So encryption at rest. After the media has been used, how are you going to sanitize it, to reuse it again, or dispose of it?
Well, nobody does that either.
Nobody does that either.
I've never seen any of this done in practice. Well, I did it when I worked at the sheriff's office because we were so highly regulated on the law enforcement side. I know that sounds weird, but if you are part of CALEA, which is it's a law enforcement accreditation program, man, they are strict. And we had a accreditation manager that was all over me for this. So yeah.
Well, it's a big risk, right? Because another key requirement is controlling that to restrict data exfiltration, right? So people should, I think, just disable their USB ports on their devices.
Well, I think the banking industry's done that for a long time, haven't they? Or
I think they have.
I've even heard of devices that arrive, because you can't order them without USB. Maybe you can, but for those that didn't do it, I've heard of people like shooting like crazy glue and stuff inside of them so that they can't be used.
Yeah. But there's still keyboards and things like that, right? So
sure.
I think there's specific like ways that you can disable like mass storage devices specifically. But that's something you should look at and specifically use sanitized machines for that.
Absolutely. Yep.
So, and then to your physical point, media transportation security, like how are you going to transport this around? What's going to happen if it gets lost? Is it encrypted?
There's been many stories of backup tapes being stolen out of people's cars.
Yeah.
Lots of that.
Well, I know people that back in the day that was their offsite as their trunk. So
yeah, right.
All right. So
the subcontrols.
So there's 9 subcontrols underneath this. So you want to take a look at those. And then just some practical media or examples of media protection mechanisms, right? So data encryption, you have the option with, what is the Windows?
Oh, BitLocker.
BitLocker to encrypt devices. There's multiple ways to do this. So I would definitely look into any USB device that you're using that has a mass storage to encrypt it.
Absolutely.
I do that all the time because if it falls out of my bag, how easy is it to just pop it in? So media access control, so implement role-based access to physical and digital media. This goes back to making sure it's in a locked room, who has access to the locked room and the file cabinet. Secure disposal procedures. Are we going to shred these? Are we going to format these? Are we going to degauss? And I see this a lot too. Like, so data encryption really comes into play for data at rest when your server environment, you're warranting those hard drives, right? So how are you going to send that back to HP or Dell to get that drive replaced in your MSA or your SAN?
That's a good point. Yeah.
So it's really important to use that device encryption or the drive encryption at rest, or have a procedure to get that off. I don't know how many times, and I haven't seen this really be an issue in a while, because I think people typically do this now, or they just keep the drives. But in the DL 380 days, the beige, people were sending hard drives back and forth. Just, here you go, send us a new one. So
yeah, I never really thought about that. That's an interesting point.
Yeah. What do we want to get to next? So implementation best practices, develop a media protection policy, use encrypted storage solutions, implement logging and tracking, maybe even like a detailed log of who had the device and when it was checked out, when it was checked in, media control mechanisms like that, and train employees on media security. I think that's pretty much wrapped up in everybody's yearly security awareness training, where they don't pick up the USB drives in the parking lot and come stick them in. So
hope so.
Keep that going. I'm going to talk about some products. I mean, some good, better, best. We have the built-in encryption like BitLocker and FileVault, enterprise media encryptions like semantic endpoint encryption, things like that. There's a ton of like device encryption.
Yeah, that's a whole market.
Software, yeah. And then really kind of full-scale like DLP solutions that you would implement like enterprise-wide.
Yep.
So some key policies. You'll want to media handling policy, an encryption policy, media disposal policy, portable media usage, which may be wrapped up in your acceptable use policy, and then some media transportation guidelines or how you're going to handle that media moving around the environment.
Yep, absolutely.
What else do we want to hit on here? Do you want to hit on some common challenges around this? So,
yeah, I think just like we said, the prolific use of USB still in environments. I know there used to be these USBs that you could purchase that were already I think they were almost already encrypted, or it was like
the padlocks.
Yeah, it was like a super secure USB. But to your point, I can't believe that we still have to talk about the use of USB. But I guess we're going to have to for probably the foreseeable future. And then like we talked about, just I think the lack of encryption, that encryption is a demotivator. I know that it's required and in a lot of areas. Like, you really need to do that, especially when we're talking about the 171 protocol here. But just the encryption process is inconvenient because you have to come up with some super secure password, and then you've got to log into your password manager, and then it's a pain. So for the most part, I think that none of this is being done. Just because of how inconvenient it is.
Right. And there's nothing convenient about NIST 800-171.
No, absolutely. Right.
Yeah.
Security is definitely not built around convenience. So I remember it's been, I think 3 or 4 years ago. Well, it's been longer than that. It's probably been 4 or 5 years ago. We had a event at our old office in Miamisburg, and it was a shredding event.
Yeah.
And do you remember that?
Yeah.
And then, so we hired this company to come in and do paper shredding and stuff. And it was a really good event. Like, people really came out for that. The thing that took us by surprise was how many people came with their hard drives. And we had an organization show up with boxes and boxes of them because they had just been, they would decommission devices and they would store them, right? But they didn't really know who to partner with to get rid of them. So when we offered that, they really took advantage of that, which was fantastic, because they were properly being disposed of, right?
Right.
But it cost us a lot of money because
Yeah.
they charged us per hard drive, and we didn't expect people to come out in that number. But I'm glad they did.
Right.
That was a worthwhile investment in the community.
Yeah. So, I've seen data centers where they've had pallets, the boxes that are on the pallets, the full-size pallets, just full of hard drives waiting to be disposed of. So,
yeah, not ideal.
no. So, All right, so that'll kind of wrap us up today.
Yeah.
So if you're looking for a place to start with this, I would start looking around your organization and kind of talking about how do we use portable media and in our server environment. Like, are we using encryption at rest? Are we encrypting our endpoints? Things like that to really kind of get started on this. So
Sounds good.
all right, so we'll see you next time when we talk about personnel security.
Yep. Sounds good. See you next time.
Thanks.